Welcome, folks, to the Santa Clarita Valley Leadership and Business Solutions webcast. I'm Paul Raggio.
And I'm Lisa Raggio, and we're very happy to be here again today to be providing business tips, leadership solutions, partnering with the Signal to deliver this to our community. And we're going to talk about a couple of things today. We're going to reflect on Paul's recent article, Good to Great, and give you some tips on how you can be good to great. And then we're going to share some learnings that we received recently from our executive coaching training that we just completed. So before we do that, I know, Paul, you like to mention what we offer ongoingly with our business health checkup.
We have a complimentary offering that's great for sole proprietors and smaller businesses, and it's dealing with your business and the health of your business. We provide you with a checklist, and we have multiple checklists that we can use depending on your business itself. And you'll go through the checklist, and it gives you a great value in just understanding here's some key business practices that ought to be in your business. And if they aren't, you have the opportunity to talk to us about the value that we can bring in helping you with that. But it covers anything from your financial, your strategic planning, the way you deliver your services, about your systems and processes, even things about your work environment, culture, and team. So it's something that's truly a value to you, and we encourage you to contact us. Spend about 60 to 90 minutes with us. Doesn't cost you a thing other than your time, and you'll walk away with some real value.
Yeah, and to find out more about that before we talk and have a conversation about Good to Great, you can always go to onetruenorthcoach.com to find out more information about the business health checkup.
Yeah. Well, today's subject is, based on a book that Jim Collins wrote, and I think it was about a decade ago or so, titled Good to Great, and it was an instant hit in the business community. And I'll quote them, one of the great quotes out of it is, good is the enemy of great, and that is one of the key reasons why we have so little that becomes great. We don't have great schools principally because we have good schools. We don't have great government principally because we have good government. And few people attain great lives in large part because it's just so easy to settle for a good life. So I wanted to craft an article that really addressed this whole concept of mindset, and especially your mindset in terms of business and where you're going. And most importantly, because we're in another transition period. We're transitioning out of the pandemic into what will be a novel business environment, and that may not occur for another 6 to 12 months. So we'll continue to be in a transition period during this time. And what are things that we ought to be doing to get us from good to great? And that's really the premise of the article.
Yeah, and we're going to talk for a few minutes about that because there's some real substantive things that can be done that are going to be helpful to our business owners and organizational leaders. And I just want to reiterate, it starts with the mindset. We're going to be talking about purpose and vision and a few other things. But you've got to look through the lens of a growth mindset if you want to be looking at your long-term impact and sustainability. And some of the work that we've talked about in the past where all of us have been in a stressful situation. There's been a lot of crises that have gone on over the last year and a half. So now we're coming upon feelings of post-traumatic stress. There's an opportunity to look through a positive lens with that and look at post-traumatic growth. How can we have a mindset that is resilient, that is adaptable, and is able to look through the lens of long-term impact and sustainability? One of the things you talk about, we always talk about, people who know us in our coaching business, we start with why. Being purpose-driven and getting clear on what is the purpose of your business, why did you create it? And if you're an organizational leader, what is the purpose of your organization? What problem is it seeking to solve? What is the why? So if you want to just share a few thoughts in regards to being purpose-driven and starting with why.
Sure. Yeah, when we look at the importance of purpose and how it drives everything else in your organization, because it adds clarity, focus, definition, it really does get you to the point of where you're headed, what you have to do today in order to get there, and then all the other subordinate objectives that you may have that your people are going to carry out in order to achieve the goals that you've established. So the purpose part becomes really important, and you derive the purpose from your why. I mean, that's how we set it up when we talk to clients. We do exercises on this specifically to get at what that why may be in order to get to what your purpose of being in business will be, and they have to be aligned. I mean, your personal why and your business why have to be aligned. If they aren't congruent, you're going to have difficulties in one area or the other. So that's part of the thing that we can help you with, is making sure that you're aligned in that area.
Right. And then when you have that foundation, and we talk about using the framework of a home, of building a home, and you want your home to be able to be a legacy home, long term, that you could see your grandchildren there when you're building that home. So you want to make sure that the foundation is solid and stable, and that's knowing your why. And then you can build upon that. And the first thing after you're clear on your why is, where are you headed? And this right here is a great conversation to have for a few minutes, because we have been so mission centric, our businesses, cross sectorally speaking. We've been very concentrated on the how and the what, and trying to differentiate that. That becomes the unique service proposition for nonprofits, the unique sales proposition for for-profits. Well, how are we different from our competition? Let's make sure that we accentuate that in the mission and the mission statement. We haven't spent a long time on vision. And I want to ask you, Paul, the other day we heard a presenter say, you can't lead if you don't have a vision.
Right.
And what do you think about that when I ask you that question? Do you think that's true?
Well, let's just reflect on what we presented last week to the Workforce Development Business Alliance at College of the Canyons, and it was hosted by Jeffrey Forrest, who's the vice president of the Economic and Workforce Development. And we had the same discussion with them. How do you lead through COVID? And first, it's understanding what your current environment is like. So we have to recognize that how we engage with people, how we communicate, our work environment itself, our business model, it's all changed. I mean, it's changed because we went into the pandemic. It's now changing because we're in a transition period. And it's going to change again when we get into a new novel business environment. So even our systems, processes, and procedures, they require some tweaking and in some cases, wholesale change. On the other hand, what we know has remained the same are pretty much your values, leadership principles, and management skills. Just the nature of doing business is about the same. And then what we call strategic thinking and execution planning really remain the same. But the way that you get forward movement is by having a vision. And Lisa was talking about this. We see in so many business the absence of a vision, and that vision, whether it's looking, in some smaller businesses, it may be just looking 12 months out. In larger businesses, maybe mid-size, maybe you're $250, $500 million business, maybe you should be looking 5 years out. But that vision is truly your pathway forward. And without it, you'll have struggles, and it creates some chaos in your business. So when we talk about a vision, we're defining it as something that's future oriented, it's directional, it's inspirational, it's aspirational, it's affirmational, and it really does address your why and the purpose of your organization. Now, not every one of those things has to be covered in a vision statement, but when you provide your vision statement, you ought to be looking at what's the framework and how are we going to do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other thing that what you just talked about reminded me that we'll talk to, I would say most organizational leaders and business owners that we've come across aren't really clear on their vision. they're clear on their mission. However, when we ask, is it published? They'll say, not sure, I'm not sure where it is. If I called up a team member and I asked them what your mission is, would they say what you said?
Mm.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. And when you're publishing it, you're making a commitment to the public at large to say, I am committed to delivering the service this way. And when you're saying the vision, it's an even greater commitment because you're talking about how it is that you're going to serve and add value, how you're going to solve the problem that is within your particular ecosystem, whether it's wealth management, if it's education, if you're an attorney and what you're doing in regards to personal injury,
Right.
right? So the other thing that we want to encourage people to do is to leverage and maximize these opportunities for messaging. That's what it all comes down to, right? At the end of the day, if you had one word to summarize all this, it would be, what is your message? What are you leaving people with? And you get to choose when you've developed the clarity with your why, with your vision, with your mission. You know, a little bit more thoughts on mission before we move on to values too, is mission, because we've been so mission centric, we talk to some business owners and organizational leaders that, oh yeah, I think I wrote that a long time ago. I think, you know, long time ago and describe it. And that's an opportunity to refresh and say, well, is it relevant? Is it still relevant? Is it impactful? Does it need to be refreshed? And we've talked about this a lot, Paul, you know, with the people, our clients. There is no school in which you're certified for how to write your purpose, vision, mission, points of culture statements. This is an art, and
Right.
it should stay an art, because then it becomes for you, what is it that you authentically can claim is right for you when it comes to your vision, mission, purpose. Vision is a commitment for longer term thinking and planning. Mission is one that you may, because it's the road in which you're going, your how and your what. If you haven't looked at it for 20 years or thought about it, it should be a part of your strategic planning every year to say, is our mission driving us towards our vision? Is the how and what do we do? Is it really driving us to our vision? And I was thinking about this recently and trying to put this, because, you know, analogies, you know, as we came up with the house, you know, that organically came about when we were talking to clients about, well, let's get your foundation
Hmm.
stable first. That's your why. And then you've got what you can build upon with the framework and where you're going. And it's almost to me like if you're walking by a bus that's parked and it looks like a great, like a rock star bus, you know, where it's got all the bells and whistles on it, and you can hear the chatter inside of the plush seats, of the air conditioning, of the sub-zero refrigerator, of the flooring, of the tinted windows. And you walk inside and say, this is such an awesome transportation. Where are you going? Oh no, we hadn't thought about that. We haven't talked about where we're going. We're just really concentrating on how cool it is and what it does. Oh,
Yeah, that's a great example. And you know, from a business application standpoint, at the monthly staff meetings I would have in my business past, uh, and often financially, we had a financial review monthly, and we had a forecast that went out 18, 24 months. So in our discussions during that review, vision always came up. It was central to the discussion because if you're looking out for a financial forecast 18 to 24 months, you have to think through, okay, what is it that we're going to exhaust resources in order to achieve something? And whatever that achievement is, how does that align with our overall vision? And in my case, we were with a corporation. How does it nest into the corporate's overall vision and meeting some of the board of directors demands? So this becomes really important that you bring vision and mission, and we haven't talked about points of culture yet, but you bring it into the daily conversation. It isn't something that you just put in a notebook and on a shelf. It's something that you bring into the daily conversation, not only with your executive team, if you're large enough to have one, but you bring it into your daily conversation with your workforce. And when you have discussions about where are you headed, where are we headed, here's how you contribute to that, because we have a vision, and this is how we're moving forward. It gives so much more personal engagement and makes this, we talk a lot about emotional connection in leadership, but it really does draw the workforce to you, because you're creating an emotional connection with them, because they realize how important their contribution is to the overall vision of moving the organization forward. So it's a
Right.
great point that you brought up. That's really important that you make this part of the daily routine, your leadership by walking around routine. You talk about your vision, you talk about your mission, you live out your points of culture.
Right. And we're going to talk about points of culture in just a second. For a few more tips in regards to that, you can be putting it on your agendas, your vision and your
Mhm.
mission. You can have your team be reading them out loud when you start a meeting. How are they incorporated into your decision making, to your job recruitment? Are they a part of the questions that you ask? And holding people accountable, right? And ensuring that, how that comes to, let's say, performance measurements too. That brings us to points of culture or core values. And we like to talk about core values as being your compass. And a compass is really important to us because it's a symbolic representation of our why. One True North, that was created with us wanting to be supporting people going towards their North Star, discovering what it is, having the support to arrive at that, and the compass driving us towards our One True North. But
Mhm.
when you're living your values, that is a way in which you can be promoting to your team. These are the things that we agree upon in which we're going to conduct ourselves and our business. And not only for your team, this becomes for who your customer base is. Like attracts like, right? And your constituents and your clients. Really being clear on what your values are, and you'll see that the clearer that you are and commit to values, the more likely you're going to track that in team members, strategic alliances, partnerships, customers, clients, constituents. So, any thoughts on that from you?
Well, they're your guidepost. I mean, they truly do set your left and right and north and south limits and what you're going to do in terms of business practices. And as you said, just as importantly, the type of clients that you're going to engage. If you find that you're going to be with a client that doesn't live by your values, that's not a client you want. Or a teammate. We wrote an article not too far back, uh, all hat, no cattle. And part of the reference was in terms of a teammate, and that the teammate on paper, you're looking to fill a gap that you have that you want to shore up so you can present yourself better to a potential client. So you look for a teammate. And oftentimes you'll go through and see a teammate that on paper looks terrific. But when you actually get them into performance on a project or a contract, you have to give them a cure notice. So, I mean, the question is how do you do that? And part of it is that you use these guideposts called your points of culture, which really deals with your overall organizational culture as one of the filters in not only bringing people in to your organization, how they operate in your organization, but also how you operate with other teammates. And if they aren't aligned and they aren't consistent, you don't want them on your team, whether it's an employee or whether it's another teammate that you're looking to shore up one of your gaps.
Yes, and before we wrap up this section, and we're going to talk about exciting news about what Paul and I just received recently in our training. Uh, I want to just bring up, because I think examples speak louder than words. We have a client who we're working with on his commitment statements,
Mhm.
and we got to the core values. What are we going to establish for the organization for core values? And he offered up four. And we remembered something from our first coaching sessions, that one other value, justice, was really important to him. He had brought it up. And so in our recent coaching session, we asked, well, what about justice? We know that you brought it up initially. And he paused and he looked and he thought about it. And we said, well, there's your answer. So if you have to pause and think about if that value is a core value for you, it's not. Because your core values, which become your points of culture, are your non-negotiables. There's no amount of money, there is no amount of leniency or compromise. There's nothing you would do to forsake that value. That's how you know it's your core value. So we can wrap it up there in regards to read that article, Good to Great. It will be a good complement for this conversation. And then, Paul, what's the exciting news that we want to share with our listeners?
Well, Lisa and I have been in training. I mean, just like we encourage many of you, is always be learners. You're always trying to look at things differently, and you can't do that if you stay isolated. So we encourage you to always go out and do what you can to learn and improve your own business position. So we did that. We were given the opportunity to take a 5-week course on executive coaching, and we accomplished that this last week. And so we're certified executive coaches now. It's another certification for our business that we're very proud of. But Lisa, I know it was especially a great journey for you. Talk a little bit about maybe 2 or 3 things that really resonated with you going through this coaching process.
Yeah, it was a great about 30 hours of training that we had, and I'll say 3 takeaways. One of them was that the power of appreciative inquiry. It
Mhm.
was reinforced to me how if we're not coming from a place of inquiry with those that we are serving, we're really not doing them justice. So if you're a leader and you have staff and direct reports, and if you're always telling them what to do, they're not learning what it is that they need to do in regards to professional and personal development. For those of us that have been the go-tos for advice, and like you, Paul, in the past, wearing the hat of executive director, I know that it's really easy to you just want to help everybody and solve the problem.
Mhm.
You just want to say, this is what we're going to do. We got it figured out. Don't worry, I'm going to take care of it. And on the surface, for the moment, it seems like you're doing the right thing. And you realize that you're really compromising and crippling their ability to think for themselves and to problem solve. 1, 2, platinum rule reinforced, which is golden rule is treat others as you would want to be treated. Platinum rule is treat others as they would want to be treated. And the reminder of how many resources we have in this day and age in 2021, in which if we wanted to invest, we really do have the power to learn about the different styles of people and approaches and behaviors and tendencies that they have. And that's a big key when it comes to executive coaching, because you're coaching leaders who have teams in which they're looking for the best way to connect and communicate. Last but not least, and I want to hear from you, culture.
Mhm.
What you don't address, you condone. That's
Right.
it.
Yeah.
What you don't address, you condone. So those are my 3 takeaways. What are your 3 takeaways from executive coach training?
Yeah, I think those are, I mean, they're really important. Uh, One of my biggest takeaways is always looking to get your team aligned.
Mm,
And certainly when I was running multiple companies, it's a chore. It's a chore to keep them aligned with where you're headed in terms of your vision. And you have to have checkpoints. You have to develop checkpoints along the way to do that. But having them aligned, also having your staff aligned. So there's a lot of energy and focus put on creating this alignment. And that means there has to be a commonality between staff and other leaders within your organization about how you're going to project or move the organization forward. So, our jobs really in the executive level training or coaching piece is asking the right questions
mm,
and making sure that we can explore different ways of accomplishing something that a leader in a larger organization may just be blinded to because they're so into what's happening today. Certainly, when I was running organizations, that was always an area that I got help in terms of focus on. I belong to a peer advisory group and met with them once a month. And during that monthly period, I would roll out some of the issues that I'm facing and ask for help to look. I have blind spots, and I want to be able to be exposed to areas that I may not have thought of in resolving some of the issues we had. So
Right.
that's a really important piece of, the whole coaching and facilitating for the mid-sized companies. And when we say mid-sized, we're talking, maybe 15 million up to 150 to 250, $300 million company. Those are the size of companies we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and this also brings up the opportunity of how we can take this new learning and apply it here in our own community. And we're passionate about leadership development. We're passionate about growing businesses and organizations and the people within them. So
Right.
not only do we have our executive coaching certifications, so to speak, now, we also have an opportunity to have a new offering. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it may be exciting to share that with our listeners too, of what our new offering is in our community.
Right. Yeah, thanks. Recently I also attended a facilitator course on adding zeros, and that's the title of the course itself, but it's really a facilitator's course on how do you get the best out of leadership teams of organizations. And one of our offerings is that we can provide a mid-sized company with an alignment assessment, and it really looks at what we call you should be focused on 5 disciplines of exponential growth. That's really your strategy, your business development, the people in your organization, how you execute, and then your mission, maybe not in the traditional sense mission, but really mission and breaking down your values, your purpose, and what you're giving back to the community. So we have an assessment that is really enlightening to a team of leaders or executives in or an organization to see if they're aligned. And so if I were to ask one team member, what's your strategy? Would that response be the same as the other team member, especially on your leadership team? I mean, these things are important. And if there is misalignment, how do we get it back into alignment? So that's another offering that we provide to the mid-size businesses or companies. All you have to do is contact us. We'll email you the assessment. You do it online. Your leadership team does it online. And then we'll come back and sit down with you or your leadership team. If you're the CEO, we'll sit down with you, go through the assessment before we do with the leadership team, and then talk through how we can help you with some of the challenges you may have where there's a misalignment.
Yeah, that's great, Paul. And I'm going to have you do the closing because we're living in a virtual world and I've got the dog barking. So close out and tell our
Okay.
listeners what they can find out more.
Well, we hope you visit our website at onetruenorthcoach.com. There you'll see our background, our own vision, mission, purpose statements, and you'll see our offerings that we have for any size business, whether it's small, sole proprietor, or mid-sized businesses. But you can take a look at that. We also still have our COVID page up, which gives you an awful lot of pointers, and then you'll find on there the articles that we often comment on, and these videos. We do a number of different types of video sets that are meant to really just expose you to some leadership and best business practices. So we encourage you to go to our website at onetruenorthcoach.com.
And with that, thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to coming back in a couple of weeks with more info.
Thanks, folks.